Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Wilson Club in the Sedulo Liverpool office. Really lucky today to be joined by two great operators in the bar industry. We've got Matt Jones from Roxy Ballroom and Andy Haygarth from NQ64. Today we're just going to have a bit of a discussion about how the guys have been getting their businesses ready and prepared, getting ready for the 19th of July and what that means for restrictions easing and getting a bit more back to normal for the industry. I think if we start by the guys giving a bit of an introduction into their businesses, just for anyone that doesn't know. Matt, are you able to sort of start?
Yeah,
with a bit of
Matt Jones from Roxy Leisure Limited. We've kind of got two brands that run under there. We've got Roxy Ballroom and Roxy Lanes, which is sort of more bowling focused. In total, we've got 10 sites now. Before lockdown, we had 7. So we've kind of increased 3 within the last 18 months. And then we've got a bit of a growth plan to hopefully open another 5 in the next 18 months.
Brilliant. Andy?
I'm Andy Haygarth from NQ64. We've got 3 sites at the moment. Well, we had 3 sites going into lockdown, come out with 4 as of last week, 2 weeks ago. Got 2 more to come this year in Cardiff and Edinburgh, and then probably plan to get 4 or 5 a year for the next couple of years.
Brilliant. Well, already just from speaking to what you've said there, it sounds like you've been really busy over the last sort of 12 months in one of the, if not the hardest hit industry. Matt, sort of what sort of things have you been doing? You said you've been looking to expand sites and things, but what else have you been doing within the business?
Yeah, so we were just pretty, starting from the top, we had no idea what was going to happen during COVID. If I'm being honest, I wasn't prepared. My mindset was that this was going to be a 2-month thing.
Yeah, I think
it was going to blow over. I was more just focused on the short term, like, oh my God, what we're going to do for these 2 months, let alone sort of be sort of bouncing in and out of trading for the last sort of 16 to 17 months. But the mindset's always sort of remained the same, which was to keep busy, keep active, use the downtime to try and change the business for the better.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly after the first lockdown, there was a lot of significant changes I wanted to make in the business that I thought would prepare myself better for further expansion. So that was recruiting new people, switching up some roles, and of course shopping for potential new sites.
So did you have that? You had that the respite, I guess, with even though the bars were closed and everything was sort of ground to a bit of a halt. You were able to have a bit more time to think strategically, really, in what you're looking to do.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the emotions were all over the place with what was going on. So I just went back to basics and just started thinking about the business. What can I improve on the business, and what can we do to get ready for opening? There's obviously been loads of challenges with loads of different things with restrictions that we've had to learn and work out ways to operate, and we've had to be hugely reactive, not knowing were customers are going to come back.
Yeah.
Were we going to be at 50% occupancy, 100% occupancy? We just didn't know anything. So we had to remain reactive. But certainly, yeah, we used the time to just plan for the future, really, and just think about, we didn't want this to slow us down in reaching our ultimate goal, which was to continue growing up to 15 sites as quickly as possible.
Yeah, yeah. Andy, did you have anything different? Or?
Yeah, it was pretty quick. We're not as far in our growth as Roxy were. So when we went into lockdown, we had 3 sites for NQ64 and no head office team. It was me and my business partner, co-founder Matt. We went in, there was just the 2 of us that went. Other than that, it was everyone was site level. So as soon as lockdown started, everyone was furloughed, GMs were down, it was just us 2.
Yeah.
I suppose immediately we were looking, thinking, well, we had a great site in Peter Street in Manchester, the one we've just opened, but essentially we had money to complete the deal, but no money to build the place.
Okay.
So it was kind of like immediately was just focused on kind of getting funding in place to kind of do that and just secure the rest of the business. So yeah, it was like the first lockdown was very much like just kind of survival mode, making sure we do that. And then as Matt said, when we reopened in July, maybe naively, but we did not think that. We assumed we'd come back, we'd open up, and restrictions would fall away gradually, kind of as they are doing now. We never saw going in. So we were looking at getting the funding, and we were looking at kind of putting ourselves in a position to grow. So the middle part of the COVID, we were kind of recruiting and getting a head office team together. That like it's still a relatively small team, like 5 or 6 of us, but we were just kind of getting in that position, getting ready to kind of grow and getting on with. After we got the investment, I think we'll talk about it later on. That was really like kind of positioning ourselves to do that 4 or 5 sites a year.
So it's a lot of responsibility, I guess, for you and as if you and just your business partner, just for 2 people to be completely responsible for it.
Yeah, it feels like now, obviously, like we've hired an FD, we've hired like people like marketing, we've hired a team now.
Yeah.
That it's the value of that to us is massive since we brought them on. It kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say we felt under pressure. It was just how it was. So we were pretty. It was just as all these things are happening, you're not really taking time to think about things like that. It's just like
just got to deal
get on with it. And fortunately, like we got some new investors, and we kind of got to a point where like we positioned ourselves really well for the future. But it's been an interesting 12 months.
Yeah, because as I say, I guess Matt, your business was a bit more mature at the point of going into that period, and you had the wider management team around you to sort of add a bit more support. Is that something that you found important, and were you able to sort of pull together and sort of get a bit more confidence based on that?
Yeah, 100%. We hired an FD in January, and the timing of that couldn't have been better, really.
Yeah.
And he's been really instrumental in just sort of calming the business through the whole pandemic, really.
Yeah.
Just sort of understanding the cash balances, understanding the legislation on what we need to do with staff and furlough and all this. So myself, Pete, and my brother Ben, and John, who's in operations, we actually continued working right the way through. We were at the time, I think we had 200 employees.
Wow, okay.
Across the business, and everybody needed to be spoken to. There was constant questions as we were getting information from the government. We were having to translate that into how we were able to operate as a business, and then speak to the management teams and keep them engaged. We felt busy, but we weren't really achieving. We weren't bringing in any money. We weren't making money, but we just felt busy. Busy doing nothing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you're always going to be looking, as you say, you're always on the hunt for new sites and things, and that drive to grow the business never sort of went. So you just need to make sure it's nice and secure and robust in the meantime, I suppose, is what you're focusing on at that point. Yeah. And I'm conscious that we've spoken about this, is that the sort of subsector of hospitality that you're in that activity, competitive socialising gaming sort of part of the market is a bit different, and what we'll probably talk about today is not necessarily reflective of the wider sort of bar and leisure industry, but great to get the insight just in that sort of area of the market. So as I said, it sounds like obviously really been really busy over that sort of time and not letting things get too much. You both went through a funding and investment process over the course of last year. Matt, sort of near the start of 2020, and Andy, you sort of towards the end of it. How did you find those conversations at that point, and then what did that mean for you going through, like confidence-wise and having comfort as you sort of went through the ongoing sort of pandemic?
For us, it was interesting. We were going out. We went out looking for money at probably the worst possible time ever. Yeah. We had an agreement in place. We talked to a couple of banks and people that were kind of keen to lend us money pre-COVID. It was the worst time, and we just kind of as soon as it really hit, got those phone calls saying we are interested, but let's see what happens. And we weren't in a position that we were desperate for funding in the sense of like for survival, but in order to keep growing, that we definitely needed it. We partnered with got investment from Imbiba, who are specialise in leisure.
Really well known in the industry.
And they've been great. And I think the key thing, I think potentially when we were looking, we didn't have as much interest because anyone who invests across different sectors, they were not picking bars at this stage. But Imbiba kind of shared our vision that like there's going to be a lot of opportunity come from this. They like the company, so I think what we started talking to them in lockdown 1.
Yeah.
And the deal was going. We were progressing through the deal. But during the deal, we reopened in July and did really well. So I think whether or not they would agree now, I would say that they are like that definitely helped us. Like, proved that we could come back. So we ended up completing the deal just as lockdown 2 was happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like the fact that we bounced back well once really helped, doesn't it? Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it was.
And I suppose it showed that there was always going to be that appetite from customers to come back to the places that they like.
I think something, I don't know if Matt felt it, from our business, it was something that, like, in lockdown 1, when you come into our venues, you touch a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So we did have conversations that were like, well, are people going to be nervous about, like, we can clean it, we can sanitize it, but is it going to be a thing that people are going to come out of this and not be as keen to touch things?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of nice in July to come back and think, yeah, okay, like, people are...
And they will come out if they're wearing masks and stuff. They're still happy to do that.
Yeah, exactly. We just didn't know. We didn't know how our guests would feel about it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it turned out that they were happy with the kind of precautions we were taking, and yeah, it didn't cause us problems. But that was definitely a concern. I imagine that was a question that the investors had. And the fact that it didn't cause an issue was probably good for us.
Yeah. Matt, did you experience anything different in terms of, like, with your investors? How did you work with them? As I said, you sort of secured them as just going into that period. So how were those conversations at that point?
Yeah, very similar to Andy. So our deal was sort of agreed in principle, and sort of we almost had, like, I don't know if you think of it in sort of lease terms, like an agreement for lease, and then the lease was going to complete around March.
Yep.
And that's obviously when the pandemic started, or when it became more widely known anyway, in the UK. So we had already agreed our deal, and we were just kind of waiting for this March date for everything to sort of be signed and be complete. And yeah, we got that dreaded phone call of, we need to put this on hold. We had to have several sort of phone calls, emergency phone calls, meetings, over video calls. We lost a lot of sleep, wondering, was this deal going to happen?
We definitely did.
Was it not going to happen? Obviously, you guys were helping us all the way through it. We spoke to Paul a lot on the phone through the whole thing, trying to guide us. And we just had to keep re-emphasising to our investors why they invested in the business in the first place, and that the pandemic wasn't going to last forever. So, we would do everything we could to protect the business, but they were backing us as a management team and as owners to guide the business through this pandemic and come out of it doing a good job. So yeah, it was definitely a rocky road, and the conversations got quite tough. And it was more a timing thing for us. We had other commitments as well going on in the background. We were using some of our investment money to buy some other sort of leisure property on a different side of the business. But we got there, and I think the nerves definitely settled when we reopened for the first time.
Yes. Yeah.
And we started. We always said we would have been happy if we had broken even. When we came out of the first lockdown, we actually started to make money again quite quickly, and that's when the nerves sort of settled down. I think everyone took a sigh of relief. Certainly, the investors did. Yeah. We just carried on from there, really.
Yeah, and then, as you say, with having that that sort of investor on board means that you can sort of go out, you've made sure that the business is stable, then you can sort of go out and continue that growth journey, really, and it gives you the confidence to go and look for new sites and sign for them as well, and even start building within that time as well.
Well, it became a bit of a team effort as well. So as soon as they committed to invest, which was around May, that's when it finally sort of completed. Very quickly, they became, for the right reasons, heavily invested into the business, and helped us as well. Obviously they've got other businesses in loads of different sectors going through the same thing, and there was just a lot of information sharing, how other businesses were operating, what they were doing. So we kind of felt that suddenly we had a massive support network when they joined, and we started formalising everything you do when you start having investments such as board meetings, the 100-day plan, where do we want to take the business, formulate the growth for the next sort of 12 months. So yeah, it definitely felt like everything calmed down in May, once we had signed that deal properly.
Brilliant, yeah. And then you just straight on the road looking out for new sites. And I think you'd had a site that was already signed, and you were sort of midway through building, or you were just about to start building, and you just sort of gave you the confidence to carry on with that spend and commitment.
It did, but we had to push things back.
Yeah.
There was a nervousness of spending too much cash, not knowing what was going to happen with the pandemic. I think we actually signed a lease in March for a new property, just before it all sort of kicked off.
Yeah.
And that was in hindsight, we've kind of lost a year's worth of rent free there, that we should have taken the benefit of with that property. So that was sort of circulating in the air quite a bit as a potential issue. But we just had to be a bit more cautious about everything we were doing.
Yeah.
And the mindset was, let's get the existing bars open first before we open any new sites.
Fair.
But the building teams just slowed down to like half pace. So we did keep on building.
Yeah.
But it wasn't normally you'd have like a 12-week program for building a new venue. We sort of, I think the Manchester build in the Arndale Centre, I think it was a 9-month build in total.
Right.
So it dragged out quite a bit.
Yeah,
But it was nice because it was, construction was allowed to continue during the pandemic, and that was a nice sort of break for me to be able to go visit the site and be involved with something.
Yeah, that's your favourite bit, though, isn't it? Of the,
it is. Yeah, we like building.
Yeah,
we like developing. So
brilliant. Well, I mean, you've both opened sites over the last year. 2, isn't it, for you, Matt? And is it 2 for you as well?
No, just Peachtree.
Just the one in the last couple of weeks.
We opened Birmingham. Birmingham got 5 weeks before COVID.
Yeah.
So I suppose that it was this year. It wasn't 2019.
Yeah,
lost that year. But Peachtree opened a few weeks ago. So that was, as soon as we got the investment, we could kind of crack on with doing that. And we managed to secure 2 more sites that will be open in the next couple of months.
Fine. So. And how did you find the property market over for sort of your area in the last?
I don't know what Matt's found, but I felt like in the summer. It felt like a lot of came free, a lot of churn, and that's when we kind of got these other 2 sites. We got a third that we didn't get a license on as well. So it felt like there was a lot, but then come the back end of 2020, early 2021, it felt like almost there was a lot it almost stalled a bit, maybe waiting for the rent moratorium to end.
Yeah.
And that having been pushed on again. We were kind of expecting a lot of activity and a lot of stuff coming up off the back of that. There's still stuff coming, but I don't think the rush hasn't come yet. I think is my view, but I don't know.
Yeah, 100% agree. We were expecting a lot more.
Yeah. Okay.
The conversations were around were rents going to become dirt cheap on the high street. A lot of big units with the big retailers sort of shutting up shop. But it kind of hasn't transpired that way. I think the government have done a pretty good job at sort of, keeping everything afloat for now.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked about it as sort of, a 3-stage wave. What one is sort of now. 2 is when the rent moratorium ends. That's going to be stage 2, and then 3 is just when simply everything sort of catches up once the CBILS loans and everything start having to be paid back. That might be stage 3.
Yeah.
So I do think a lot's going to come in the market, but I thought a lot would have come already.
Right.
Especially with we buy freehold pubs as well.
Yeah.
And there was lots of talk about how there was big funds set up by Rooney and Ant from Green King, ex-Green King.
Okay. Sorry.
Who had been part of a half a billion pound fund, I think it was, from some American money that they were putting together to go buy and swoop in and try and buy all the pubs that were supposedly going to go bust. But it just hasn't happened.
Right.
I think everyone sat on big pots of cash, really, waiting to buy. But it looks like a lot of people have managed to survive so far due to the rent memorandum.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we thought there'd be a lot more, and the ones that we did find, we have found them to be quite slow moving.
Okay.
The conversations have been quite slow. I think the fund managers that run some of these big units and big developments have been nervous, not knowing where they should be pitching on rents. You know, was there going to be actually a big demand for people wanting to come and swoop in and get these units? Or was there going to be some big gaps on the high street?
Is it just so many unknowns, isn't it? And
Yeah.
obviously the effect on retail as well. And we've seen some big retailers sort of really struggle or go under. So no one could really predict what that impact would have on the sort of units that you'd get. And I think it's good that because you're more sort of 4,000 or 5,000 square foot, and you're nearer 20 really, I guess, isn't it, at the upper limits? But yeah, it's great that again you were just talking before, and you're sort of sharing different sites and things in between where you've been, where you've looked, and it's great that there's that sort of atmosphere, I guess, and sharing of knowledge.
I think we and Matt will never be competing on many sites because a lot of the things, like Matt will send me stuff that he's looked at that's too small, and I'll kind of send him stuff that's too big because we are more in that 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. We will take a little bit bigger, but are you minimum 10? Is 10 too small?
Yeah, even that's a bit too small these days. We
Yeah.
would sort of be pitching between 15 and 20 really.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, I mean, you know, I've only sort of known Andy since the pandemic started.
Okay.
And this is, I found a lot of relationships have been forged during the pandemic of operators who have just been bouncing off each other to learn off each other, you know, ask how others are operating. I mean, I know all the guys that operate in my sector. You know, I know Tim from Lane 7 really well.
Yeah.
I know Sam from Junkyard, Chris from Ghetto Golf. These are all people that normally we wouldn't talk.
Yeah.
We wouldn't talk and share information about our businesses. But we've and it's not. I'm not just saying it's just us in competitive socialising. It's been the same. Certainly in Leeds, where kind of all the bar owners have come together on a WhatsApp group. There's like hundreds of us on this WhatsApp group, all sharing information whenever new legislation comes out. You know, it's being shared on the WhatsApp group, so everybody's talking.
That's great.
Which is really, really good.
Yeah, that's great. I wonder if that will continue.
We found a lot of common similarities.
Yeah.
You know, every time me and Andy get together, we start, you know, talking for hours, don't we? About property and, you know, what we've looked at and where we want to go next and where we want the business to be in sort of 2 or 3 years. Yeah,
well, that's something I probably wouldn't have expected to happen, but it's really nice that there is that sort of support and sort of camaraderie, I suppose, between in the industry. So great. So I'm sure there's some strange messages that get around in the hundreds of people in the Leeds bar groups as well. So
it's pretty confidential information.
Yeah.
Make sure you're not allowed to leak it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's great. And then how have you found the relationship with your existing sort of landlords? Have they been sort of fairly flexible, or how's that sort of been for you?
I'd say on the whole for us really good. Like it's across the NQ64's and the other businesses. We on the whole, like they've been. I know some of the other owners we spoke to have had like difficult situations, but for us they've been pretty understanding. Initially, like kind of deferring bits of rent, but then I think when they've realised, especially in the second lockdown, when they realised it's going a bit longer, there's a point where a lot of them have given us kind of concessions, actually like rent frees or 50%. Like not. It's felt like they've done what they can, if you know what I mean. I think it's probably helped us that we've been in a position where we can pay some rent, which in a sense that, you know, rather than if we in situations where we could ask for some concessions if we paid some. But yeah, on the whole, I think our relationships have been good.
Are these big institutional landlords or quite local?
No, I think that's for us. I think that's we've not had big kind of. It's just how it's worked out, but we've not had kind of big pension funds as kind of landlords like in. The newest site that is the case, and we're subletting from the unit above. But I'm not sure that you found. I don't know what you found with the bigger kind of pension.
Yeah, so we've had a complete mixed bag really. A lot of our landlords are quite big institutional fund managers and stuff. So some have been quite forthcoming and just, you know, almost like agreed to split things 50-50, which has been great. Some landlords have just flatly refused to talk about it. Just waiting to just wait till it all sort of unravels and gets a bit further down the road.
Right.
But we're trying to prompt conversations, and we find we're just not getting any responses from some of them.
Right. I suppose it's always going to be a mixed bag, isn't it?
Yeah, but it is a mixed bag. And you know, some of the emails are starting to come through now where landlords are asking for full rents for the period that we've been locked down for the last 18 months, just with zero concessions, which we just can't agree to at the minute. We just think there's got to be an element of sharing some of the pain on this lockdown situation. But then others have been fantastic, like the Grosvenor in Liverpool 1.
Yeah.
Who approached us quite early on and just said we're here to support you as a business.
Oh, brilliant!
We'll work with you through this pandemic, and let's just see what happens.
Fantastic, yeah.
So,
and so in your next, you mentioned your next sort of 5 sites. Then are you able to run through where you're hoping to open next?
Yeah. So we've got a relocation in Leeds. We've got Roxy Lanes in Leeds, which is only a 5,000 square foot unit, which is just as things. That was the second ever site we took on, and we're just looking at bigger things these days.
Yeah.
And we're just about to do a 15,000 square foot in the Light in Leeds. So we're just simply going to relocate it from a 4-lane alley to a 12-lane alley.
Wow.
So that's in Leeds. We are a lot of the others are nearly there in terms of solicitors and putting pen to paper with the deals, but we've kind of got under offer Bristol, Sheffield, York, Edinburgh, and we found a site we like in Cardiff as well.
Brilliant.
So we know where we want to be.
Yeah, the same sort of those sorts of big cities.
Yeah.
That'll give you increase your spread over the country quite dramatically then.
Yeah, no, I think it will. But it's not a bad thing. To date, we've kind of kept everything sort of within a 2-hour radius of Leeds.
Yeah.
But part of what we talked about earlier during lockdown was setting up the business for future growth. And I can't just keep myself pigeonholed in sort of the northwest of England. We need to be moving south. We need to be moving north.
Yeah.
And that's part of the recruitment that we did during lockdown to make sure we could do that.
Brilliant. And yourself, Andy?
Yeah, we've got Edinburgh that is pretty much ready to open, but we're waiting for Scottish restrictions to kind of ease. So that'll be likely opening 9th of August. Cardiff, which we're building now, and then other high priorities, which we've not secured, we've not signed anything on, but we've got like probably the highest priorities: Glasgow, Newcastle, London. We've got a tentative offering on a Nottingham site as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, there's still quite a lot in the pipeline for both of you then.
Yeah.
So as I say, it's great that you've sort of been able to come through this sort of period, not just surviving, but also with that strategy and expansion in place as well.
Yeah, I think for us, we've just we're trying to treat this last 18 months as just a gap, a hiccup. But it doesn't make us nervous about expanding in the future. It doesn't want to make us preserve and not do anything. If anything, there's a bit of an acceleration. Yeah. For us, we've got a bit of a fire in our belly to do this. Okay. Especially at how well we've been trading the last 6 weeks since they got rid of the stupid curfew and that sort of nonsense. But yeah, we're excited.
Brilliant. And just you must be coming out now with what you think is a much stronger business than what you went in, and being able to sort of survive that period for both of you. I'm sure you're sort of much more robust businesses. And what sort of innovations have you made within the companies to make sure that you're sort of well positioned coming out, that you think might stick around, and that you actually think, well, these are actually worth doing?
Industry wide, I think the order to table app thing is probably going to stay in some form. I'm not sure how in NQ64, people move around the venue so much, it's probably more difficult to implement. But I think for me, it's just it showed us the guests' willingness to use technology and not smart enough to know exactly where that will come. But I think that's definitely something that
just that their sort of engagement and being able to sort of say, yeah, we'll go to the extra effort to use that sort of
Yeah,
technology.
exactly. Yeah, and I think in some of our other businesses will definitely still be able to order to the table.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's definitely something that's kind of.
It'd be interesting to see what that sort of increase, if it was just like a normal world, making that introduction. Because I know that's something that you were looking at anyway, Matt, was sort of like more the table service to get people away from the bar. And it's so much easier if you are just sat at the table, just to order a drink in a few clicks of a button. And probably I've been out and probably spent, bought an extra couple of pints that I wouldn't have otherwise done if I'd had to go and stand at a bar. So
no, it was all part of the plan for us in the future. And it is a huge positive to take from what's happened this past 18 months. It's kind of been forced upon us. We were lucky that our till system had an inbuilt app that had the capability of doing the table ordering. But we didn't just want the customer to do it themselves. So we've been quite active on recruiting more floor staff to actually do table service. We still wanted that sort of relationship between staff member and customer.
Okay. Yeah.
So some people really enjoy using the app and they're happy to do that. But we're quite gobsmacked really that we're taking more money now than we were doing when we had people queuing at the bar. And I think the spend per head's probably raising up a little bit. I think rather than people being stood at the bar and panic buying, they are spending a bit of time to look at what they actually want to drink on a digital menu.
Yeah.
And they're definitely spending that little bit more rather than just buying a quick pint at the bar. They're getting something like a cocktail. And again with the app you can sort of manipulate it a bit into what you want the customer to see first.
Yeah.
When you walk to a bar like this, the first thing you see is obviously the beer. The beer pumps it straight in front of you.
Okay.
Whereas what we can do on the app is push all the cocktails to the top of the app.
Fine.
And that's the first thing that they see.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely be keeping that. And we've talked about this from if the 19th of July is the date where everything's sort of relaxed. I don't want the bar to go back to being sort of 4 deep.
Okay.
In revenue terms, I've sort of said, look, I want a cap of only really 20% of our revenue coming from the bar service.
Right.
And let's try and keep the other 80% as it is now, with a combination of app service and table service.
Brilliant. Yeah, because I know that within your one of your priorities really is that engagement with staff and customers and keeping that sort of experience touch with some really good service as well. So you're always going to have that, and you don't want to sort of jeopardise that, even however good technology can be and however efficient it can be.
Well, the staff is good to talk to people, isn't it? That's how you bring the fun.
Yeah.
But it's an opportunity as well for that staff member to talk to people about the venue, talk to them about what games we offer. Of course, do the upselling. Yeah. Which is better done person to person than it is just from technology.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're massively focused on having more floor staff than bar staff.
Fine.
If you like.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what comes up in NQ64's to utilise the technology, because that sort of crowd is I imagine is quite like techie as well. And
that's where I say that's probably the business weirdly that we probably won't use the app the app as much. People move around the venue, people playing the games, people that we generally serve at the bar, sell tokens at the bar. We're bar operators at heart, and that's where it's not as useful to have people aren't just sat at a table for a long time in that venue. So, but yeah, it's definitely something that's kind of opened up our minds to it.
Good stuff. And then sort of going into staffing in a bit more detail. Then how do you feel your staff have reacted, handled, getting back into sort of normality to a certain extent, and how has it been sort of managing that process as well?
Yeah, I think they've come out of it pretty well, pretty resilient. We're really pleased with how they've come out. I think it was in July, everyone kind of it felt like the government had thought about, had time to think about the regulations, what they were doing, and it was relatively clear how we should operate. As we got close, when we got to that October, November, December time with the 10 o'clock curfew and then changing the rules, and it was tough for the staff, I think, especially the managers who had to communicate it to the staff and then enforce it on the customers. it was tough, and it felt like by the time we were closing, it was like, yeah, they'd had enough of being like guessing the rules, get them changing, the goalposts being moved. But yeah, and when we've reopened, everyone again, like really, our teams have been amazing. Like they've come back really well. Again, tough at the moment with the isolation thing.
Yeah.
Where like managers are having to kind of deal with people isolating, people having COVID, that sort of thing. But and then recruitment has been a big one. Like I think industry wide, coming back the second time, people have really struggled. We were lucky that we retained most of our staff, but even just like most teams had a couple of people, 2 or 3 people that we needed to recruit, and in normal times pre-COVID, that would just be a case of post an advert, get a load of applicants, pick, and you'd have a pick of a good selection. We're finding now that just filling 1 or 2 positions, it really took the teams when we came back a couple, 2, 3, 4 weeks to kind of get that solid team again. So yeah, recruitment's probably something that's changed, and
right.
I don't know if that's with like a lot of Europeans that haven't come back post Brexit, as well as some people still being on furlough, some people leaving the industry.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cumulative effect of all coming together. But yeah, overall, I think our team's dealt with it really well, and yeah, we were really pleased with them.
Brilliant. How about you, Matt? You said you had sort of about 200 staff at that sort of point going in. Have you had the same sort of experience, or?
Really similar to Andy.
Yeah.
It's they've had it really tough. Really tough. Like I say, my working pattern didn't change too much.
Yeah.
I kept myself busy, kept myself at work. These people didn't really have the option, apart from getting a second job, of course. But they were kind of forced to do nothing.
Yeah.
And that's hard when we're in a social business.
Sounds great for a little bit, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds. It's a nice holiday, but after week 3, you miss that engagement.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're a hospitality business. Hospitality is engaging and talking to customers, and to not have that is been pretty tough for them. And the whole sleeping pattern, everything.
So we've talked about how your trade's been over the last couple of months since the sort of April step down of unlocking or restrictions being lifted. It sounds like it's been quite positive in the start of in the run up, and it demonstrates that people are willing to come back into bars and start sort of socialising again. That's sort of the theme that you've picked up on?
Yeah, we're really we didn't open at all in the April reopening because we didn't have enough outside space to warrant it.
Yeah.
But yeah, since May, there's 6 weeks or so now. It really feels like like, to be honest, like footfall. I know we were talking about with Matt earlier that footfall wise, we think it's picked up as much. It's back to full strength, if not a bit more.
Yeah.
From our point of view, some of our venues are really capped capacity-wise. So I think we'd forecast being about 60-70%, and we're actually trading at 80 or 90, and that's on like limited capacity. So we're hoping once the restrictions are lifted, we'll be back. We'll be way over we'll be up like for like because. Footfall seems really good, so it's really positive.
I guess, again, partly that goes down to the sort of demographic that sort of comes to your sort of sites, really, in that it's a bit younger, and that might be the difference between sort of these activity bars and what might be sort of more traditional wet-led. I might sort of have it follow a different path, but it's difficult to say, really. Have you seen the same sort of thing at Roxy, Matt?
Yeah, Roxy's it's one thing we don't struggle with, which Andy does, is capacity. We've got large venues. So our sort of mindset's been on just trying to utilise that as much as possible, that capacity. One thing we were concerned about was the group sizes. Roxy's built on large parties, large groups, lots of corporate business as well, and that was a key sort of element that we were missing from the business.
Yeah.
But with that missing and just trading with restrictions with groups of 6, we're pretty much 20 to 25% up from 2019.
Fantastic.
And which kind of blows our mind a bit, because it's not the norm. I know it's not the norm. Like I say, we've got loads of friends in the hospitality industry who are sort of quoting the same sort of figures as Andy, which is like 80% of what is considered to be a normal trade.
Yeah.
But we're at 20% above what we were 2 years ago, which is fantastic, and that's missing the big party bookings, which is yet to come.
Yeah, I think I've already started seeing the increase in stag do invites and things like that are being reorganised. So I'm sure they're going to sort of head your way at some point soon as well.
Yeah. But we spoke about this earlier a little bit, but one of our biggest concerns is that what we're doing at the moment is actually borrowing customers from other places that do have restrictions on capacity. You know, a lot of these venues who can't have stand at the bar service are down at sort of 50% occupancies, whereas we can hold a lot of people. So, you know, are we borrowing customers from them?
Yeah.
So when the restrictions sort of, you know, relax on the 19th, we actually don't know which way it's going to go. We don't know if we're going to drop down. We don't know if we're going to increase. We don't know if we're just going to stay the same. But it's been the same for the last 18 months. We don't know. Everything's just had to be reactive.
Yeah.
But right now, things are great. So
brilliant. Well, as I say, really glad that everything's looking more positive, and as you've got pipeline sites lined up and a lot of growth and expansion, just being able to carry on what your strategies were before COVID. So hopefully everything sort of goes well on the 19th and everything can sort of reopen as planned. But thanks very much for your time, guys. Really appreciate it. Yeah, best of luck.
Nice one. Cheers.
Yep.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Will.
Okay.